Hello, welcome to another reel by Bharat Raghu. Today, first of all, wishing everyone happy International Working Women's Day, as it's originally known as, or commonly known as Women's Day. So basically, it is the International Working Women's Day, and it's on this topic and related which we will be talking today. That is the impact of socialism in the 20th century. So basically, what was the impact of socialism in the 20th century? So the Working Women's Day, coming to it, that was actually by the Socialist Party of America. The Socialist Party of America, there were protests basically for working rights. And this was on March 8th. And then this went on, there were events in Germany, there were events in Denmark, but the basic thing took off when in Russian Revolution, basically the textile workers of Petrograd on March 8th, they were protesting against the Tsar, basically the king of Russia, right? And that's where March 8th is where the famous Russian Revolution actually took off. So March 8th is the textile workers, and when the Communist Party under Lenin basically the Bolsheviks basically they overthrew the Tsar and they formed the first socialist state in Russia. That's when March 8th became the international, a Working Women's Day celebrated. It was a national holiday in the in Russia and also in all the socialist countries, which like China and the others, which later became socialist. So there is a rich tradition of socialism and the impact of socialism fighting for women's rights, which is reflected here. This, of course, in 1975 or so, that's when the United Nations adopts it as this International Women's Day. So that is one very bright example, as today is Women's Day, of the impact of socialism. Socialism has had. So socialist, not going into the theory, but going into its impact today. It was pioneered by the Russian Revolution in 1917. So this blew away the minds of a lot of people. Why was that? This was first time that the poor workers and the farmers, the peasants basically, had actually overthrown Russian aristocracy. Russian aristocracy, which is basic. Of course, it was overthrown in February of 1917 by, you can say, kind of a pre-revolution. It is like, but that didn't stabilize. There was a revolution where the Tsar abdicated, but it was mostly status quo because most of the bureaucrats or most of the people who were running the earlier parliament were, that's what continued. So there was no, huge change. But that in October or November 1917 is when the Russian Revolution actually takes place. Lenin and the Bolsheviks, they come to power, and that's when in history, first time the workers and peasants take control of a country, and they go on to start building how do we build socialism, how do we build public, huge public undertakings. They build the 5-year plans, and they go on and build the huge infrastructure and which then becomes the USSR or the Soviet Union. I mean, great strides in literacy, great strides in industrialization without the help of private capital, and then space defense. I mean, Soviet Union goes on by the end of the World War to become the Second World War to become the superpower, one of the other superpowers along with the US, of course. So this is where it all starts. How does it have a collateral impact? So the impact of socialism is it triggers this like a domino effect in the 20th century. Like in China, you have in 1950 when China under Mao, they become communist. And a lot of good experts on what socialism is by this book, edited by Irfan Habib, professor, of course, Aligarh Muslim University, and a great Marxist, you can say, historian. And it has very good writings from all the great thinkers from the socialist era. So on socialism is what it's called. Okay, so China, and then Vietnam, of course, later in the century, 1960s, 70s, in India, Jawaharlal Nehru and the socialists. There is this Congress Socialist Party, which is the left wing of the Congress, and people like Bose and Nehru are inspired by the Soviet Union. People like revolutionaries like Bhagat Singh are so inspired by this Russian Revolution in that too early in 1930s when it was just taking off in 1920s. when that was when the state was formed. And there Lenin, of course, Bhagat Singh, it's famous, he, while dying in the prison, he was reading Lenin. So he says one revolutionary is trying to learn from the other revolutionary. So that's the impact of Lenin. If anyone has any thing, that Lenin's impact, Lenin and the Russian Revolution's impact in India was huge. I mean, to answer some of the critics who, basically who think, okay, what is this foreign person, or what was his impact? So, okay, now coming to the what did it do to the 20th century? So basically, yes, the impact of socialism was from the women's rights, like the International Women's Day, May Day, of course, even in countries which were not socialist, like as I said, in India, which were under basically a parliamentary democracy with capitalism and all that, so, or in Europe, there were lots of European countries. Now, they didn't become socialist, but the impact of the socialist policies was so much that the concept of the welfare state triggered in Europe. So Germany, France, England. So for example, in England, the Labour Party comes in power, and then there is this NHS, National Health Service. So huge public sector kind of undertakings, the focus on health, education, public health, public education. Of course, Germany, so they all go on to become this model welfare states, where the concept of social democracy, which was kind like a rupture movement of socialism from Lenin, that was it was a rupture movement which started in Germany, but that kicks off in Europe, and the concept of welfare state is formed, which gives a lot of benefits to the common people even to this day. So this is the impact of socialism, the power which comes to the working class, as a class. And this internationalism, the internationalism is the bonding between the workers of all the countries. So that's what, I mean, Karl Marx's famous saying is, right, the workers of all the world, workers of the world unite. That's what he says. So that's the impact of socialism. Of course, there are negatives which go on in the Soviet Union by the end of the 20th century, where the socialist model as such, which is the public sector model, the 5-year plans, the heavy industrialization, but that fails to innovate with the changing times, changing technologies like the IT revolution and all that which comes in. So it's not able to adapt. It becomes bureaucratic instead of being for the people, and hence it collapses. And that again has a domino effect around the world. So a lot of countries, including India, till the 1990s or before that, were adopting a similar model. Now that had to be abandoned because it was supposed to take out masses of people out of poverty, which it did, like in China and even in India to an extent, but it wasn't innovating and it wasn't able to answer to the question. So that's how socialism by the 20th century's impact diminishes. So to conclude, is it over? Is the story over? No, friends, because if we look at the world around, whether it's Latin America, there has been a resurgence of socialism with the capitalist model becoming more and more aggressive around the world, and a lot of unemployment in the world. So definitely there are alternatives needed. There are alternative models being thought of, which we can talk in a separate video. But the socialism per se is basically, what it means is from each according to its ability to each according to its need. So that's how I'll conclude it. So a socialist model is that a person will work as per their ability. They work as per their ability. Some may be very able people, some may have some disabilities, or some may be not able to perform, but they work as per their ability, and the state would provide to them as per their need. So what is the need of the society, rather than just going with creating a schism in the society. It believes in equity, building equity in the society. So it is a lot of things to learn from socialism, and let's see in the 21st century what models of socialism come up and what alternatives are being built in countries, say like in China, in countries like India. These are the two major countries. What about Europe? Let's see and understand what the alternatives to capitalism are coming up, and what socialism in the 21st century may look like. Thanks for watching. Bharat Raghu signing off.